so back and so done with summer. So done with disgusting hot East Coast weather. Tim, you never told me how bad. Like St. Louis has humidity. Based on what it looks like, the West Coast is the only place that doesn't have humidity during the summer. I don't know that I ever processed that.
Well, maybe that's sort of southern Arizona-y. But dude, no, St. Louis, people forget the Mississippi River is real, and the humidity in St. Louis, straight on down, through Mississippi, Alabama, all the way down to Alabama.
But we weren't in the South, man. We were in New England. We were in New York. Mm-hmm. So we went to we figured we keep it stateside, right? It's just like enough with we'd keep it stateside. Saw some shows in New York. Once Upon a Mattress with Sutton Foster was phenomenal, absolutely hilarious. She is so gifted. I mean, here she is, late 40s, and she's reprising a role that made a 20-something Carol Burnett a star. That takes guts, and she pulls it off. But in any case, so we're in New York and met with our choreographer for the Busby Berkeley film, who is just chomping at the bit. So more news on that hopefully soon. But he is phenomenal. He is just phenomenal. He's doing a couple of productions of Irving Berlin's White Christmas the next few months. But if you're in Long Island, look for it. It's gonna be there's gonna be one in Long Island.
Lovely.
Otherwise, we were in New York, and then we went to Boston, and we did a day trip to Salem, where I got my picture taken with the Elizabeth Montgomery statue, which is really pretty much the most interesting thing in Salem. It's like the rest of the history about witches and whatnot. Don't really care about the real witches, but I did care about Samantha.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing. Right out of the train, walk on over, stand next to Samantha, get my picture taken. And then we had a day trip down to we went to New Hampshire. We went to Newport to see all the mansions, which are in the Gilded Age, right? All the Vanderbilt stuff.
Yeah. What's that series?
The Gilded Age. The Gilded
Age. Yes, that's the name of the series. Yeah.
And they've shot a lot of it there. So we saw the Breakers, which is the big Vanderbilt mansion, and that was amazing, except for the fact that it was 95 degrees and 78% humidity.
I've never seen any of that. Are they as big and as palatial as they look on television?
Yes, they are.
Oh, wow.
Now, mind you, it's what you get is they import all this stuff from France, and they're trying to look like French palatial. So there definitely is we want to be like Versailles. Mind you, none of these things are as big as Versailles. They're like little tiny mini wannabe Versailles, but they're very impressive. Yeah. They are very, very impressive. And that whole area is impressive. And then we got back to Boston. Then we went to Philly, where it was 90 degrees and 91% humidity. It's like, what? Yeah. And that was amazing. Saw, Independence Hall. And of course, it wasn't enough that I took my picture with Samantha. I had to take my picture next to Rocky. Because that's what I do. I take my picture next to statues of fictional characters. And we toured the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia. And you know what I found incredible about the Mint? You know the one thing they do not have at the U.S. Mint? Breath mints.
No mints.
There are no mints. There are no mints at the Mint. I thought that was funny. That would be the first thing I would do is you need to have a mint that looks like a penny.
Yeah, of course you do.
Like, why not? Why would you not do that? Why would you not sell mints at the Mint? Come on.
Buffalo.
Hire a marketing person, for crying out loud. Things will sell better than anything else you've got there. No, but that was cool. And then we went back to New York, and there was like some kind of hurricane residual disgustingness, and my clothes were sticking to me, and it was horrible. So we came home, and it's nice again. So
humidity.
Talk about Comic-Con, man.
Comic-Con was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. Not nearly as interesting as taking pictures with those fictional characters. By the way, there should only be statues of fictional characters, as far as I'm concerned. The statues of actual people always become problematic. Fictional characters, Captain Kirk, Spock. Nobody's ever going to want to take those down. Comic-Con was a lot of fun and a lot of fictional characters because we were doing at Comic-Con. We were down there with the graphic novel for a television series we're working on. Me, Sherman Augustus, our homie over at Stranger Things, Lieutenant Colonel Sullivan on Stranger Things. He's shooting that now, Nice. I can't talk about it because the ninjas drop from the ceiling and all that kind of stuff. I hate it when that happens. And so our graphic novel series down there complete now that people can check out. Daughters of Django. Daughters of Django is what it's called, and that's all in development. And while we were there, Colin Kaepernick happened by the booth, which was kind of quick. Dude,
I saw the pictures. That was wild.
That dude is 6 foot whatever. 11, 12. It's just nuts how tall he is.
It was astounding to me to see the pictures that you posted because it looked like he was about 3.5 feet taller than you.
He looked like you were 3 feet taller than me, but he's a foot taller than Sherman, and Sherman's 6'2". So
real.
But he made me look like a what is it, a hobbit. I look like a hobbit.
I mean, I had no idea he was that huge. Big dude.
And it looked like he could throw right now. He showed me how to throw a spiral. And we had a lovely talk. So that was just sort of great. Yeah, and that was really neat trip to Comic-Con and all of that stuff started moving forward. It's really, really cool. It's a lot of projects that we're both working on, sort of for working their way forward in various different parts of the entertainment sphere.
Fantastic. Well, we didn't have a ton of obits until like a few days ago, and then everybody started dropping. We should first talk about Bob Newhart because Bob Newhart into the last one, and that is just a level of legend that few people ever rise to. And man, that guy was as humble and down to earth his whole career as could be, and just such an unbelievable comedy influence. 2 hit series. I mean, you don't often get 2 hit TV comedy series. He got them. Yeah, got him. So
and a movie star and you're a headlining comedian for 25 years before into that, and then for 20 years before any of that, damn good accountant. And that's what I love about Bob. Yes. That seminal brand of stand-up comedy that he developed in that period when he and who else? I guess Elaine May and Mike Nichols and a few other were doing this very interesting thing that they were doing in their little suits and ties.
That is a really astute observation. It's really true. It was a particular kind of comedy that was not sketch, but it was not traditional stand-up. It was almost like a hybrid between the two. Like Bob would do those very lengthy one-sided phone conversation bits. And he didn't originate that shtick, but he perfected it. He became its like most magnificent practitioner. And that stuff was just amazing. And it's true, Nichols and May did a similar thing, except it wasn't a one-sided conversation. It was both sides of the conversation, right? Yeah. But it was a similar shtick. It was they were doing a whole elaborate thing, as opposed to, say, a Rodney Dangerfield or most of the or a Henny Youngman who are hitting you with a one-liner like every 6 seconds.
Particularly those guys who were literally from his cohort. Yeah. He just outlasted all of them. Yeah. But if Rodney had lived, he'd be 90. Bob was 94. Actually, Mort Saul, or so many great ones. Lily Tomlin actually is from his cohort too.
And then kind of somewhere in the middle, you have people like Bill Cosby and Woody Allen and others who where they'll tell you a story. It's a little longer story. But it's, it's still, they're not telling you one joke every 6 seconds. They're telling you a joke about every 45 or 50 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's how that kind of, it's a great era. Bob Newhart.
And then that whole film career. I mean, particularly starting with Elf, but even before. But
oh my God.
Television, and then a whole movie career. It's just wow.
And he's so good in Elf, and we forget how good he is because he narrates the thing. It's wonderful. It's just so good. And then we also lost bizarrely Corey Yuen. Corey Yuen, legendary Hong Kong film director and actor, one of the original Yuns who was part of went through that whole growing up with Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung. They were all part of the same, Five Little Fortunes. They were part of that same group, the brothers who came up. And Corey, of course, went on to direct tons of great movies, including the Fong Sai-yuk movies for Jet Li, lots of movies for Jet Li, and No Retreat, No Surrender was his English language debut, which introduced us to Jean-Claude Van Damme and his terrible acting. It really was. It was, that's a weird movie. But Corey Yuen died 2 years ago.
Oh, my God. This is just so bizarre.
COVID, and the family requested that it not be made public. And literally, we all just found out about it last week. Yeah. It's the strangest thing. How do you keep that secret? Everyone in Hong Kong must have known.
Well, I can tell you, look, I will accept that portion of the story as it relates to the family, but given that we're talking about the government of communist Chinese, I'm sorry, I do not believe for 1 second that something about the government, as relates to COVID, as relates to him as a particular hero, I just believe that something about the government, even if it was just a suggestion to the family, we're not going to talk about this, right? And then the family says, oh, yeah, okay, right. Because I'm sorry, there's just no way that this man would not have been just venerated for his work 2 years ago. I mean, there's just no one significant in the history of a particular kind of cinema, at least back to Bruce Lee,
Yeah, no, it's true.
Whom he did not bump up against influence him one way, one direction or another. So that's just insanely outrageous. But there it is.
And then now let's talk about Amos.
No.
Otherwise known as Famous Amos,
Amos,
who did a lot before he was famous. People don't realize he was a significant figure before he became famous for cookies. Tim, why don't you tell us why we're talking about a cookie baker on an entertainment show?
Well, Wallace Amos, who was born in 1936, so 88 when he passed in Honolulu a couple of days ago, was certainly well known for those cookies. But well before he got into the cookie business, he did all kinds of things. I happen to know that he was in the Air Force because I was in the Air Force, and he's one of these. I keep track of famous people who were in the Air Force. But nevertheless, after that, Amos notably went into the mail room at William Morris. Now, the mail room stories and the stories of people who came out of the mail rooms of various different agencies are just legend. And he's one of them. Worked his way up from that mail room into being a major agent at William Morris. Now, look, I knew about the Temptations. I knew about Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye gave him $10,000 to start that cookie company.
Yeah.
I did not know that he signed Simon and Garfunkel.
No.
He signed Simon Garfunkel. He signed Helen Reddy. He wasn't just, he was their first black talent rep at William Morris. He was the first that worked his way up to that legitimate level. But he was more or less in the rock and roll department. He wasn't just out there signing soul bands and R&B bands, as you might have expected in the late 60s and early. No, Amos, he knew what he was doing, and he signed some heavy hitters, and was very famous and very successful from all of that well before he started that cookie company in 1975.
And at some point, he just said, I just want to bake cookies.
Yep.
What a fascinating career sideways turn. And how many times do people make that pivot and it doesn't really pan out and they go back to what they were doing?
And it's interesting. He, as well as Bob, again,
Bob was an accountant.
He was a grown man with grown children when he decided to go tell jokes at comedy clubs. Amos was a grown man, a military veteran, a successful agent when he decided to bake his auntie's cookies. I do love those stories because it tells you can do whatever you want whenever you want.
Phyllis Diller was a housewife
in St. Louis
who thought her career was over. And somebody said, "You ever thought about telling jokes?
You're so funny."
And it's a whole new life.
You know,
those are great stories. Those are great stories. Those are great stories.
They're very encouraging, personally encouraging to me. And anyway, Amos pops up in a movie here and there, and on a lot of TV shows. So a legitimate person to talk about on this show.
And when I was at UCLA, there were 2 cookie places in Westwood.
Oh yeah,
frequent when I was working at the theaters. There was Famous Amos, and there was Mrs. Fields, and it was like Coke and Pepsi and Colgate and Crest, and it was like a SmackDown WWE, right? It was everybody had their favorite, and look, Mrs. Fields. Those big soft cookies were beautiful and rich, but Amos, those little crunchy ones, I could eat them by the bucket.
Yeah. You could eat a handful of Famous Amos cookies.
You could just drop a handful, and it was the best thing after a fat burger. I'd head over to a fat burger. I'd do a fat burger, and then it's like I think I could just have a handful of Famous Amos right about now.
You know what's funny?
It was wonderful.
Because they were both still there when Bridget and I landed in Westwood in 1990. Yeah. So they were there.
Fatburger's still there.
Fatburger's still there. Yeah. What's really funny though is Diddy Reese, and only you and I know what I'm talking about now. Yeah. Outlasted them both. It's still there. I went over there. It's still there because I was over there to look at the Bruin.
I know
the Village. Those our 2 preeminent movie theaters there. Anyway, Famous Amos, those cookies.
Yeah,
fantastic. Fantastic.
Wow, Didi Reese, man, that's unreal. But let me tell you something. Putting aside Didi Reese for a second, if you don't know, there's an ice cream shop in New York. It's in Soho. It's called Morgenstern's.
Oh yeah,
and it is unreal. It is the best ice cream I've ever had in my life. It is worth the humidity. My gosh, that's a good ice cream shop. It is fantastic. And on a weekend night, the line is out the door, just like Didi Reese in Westwood.
Yep,
fantastic.
Yep, that's crazy. Man.
Well, let's get pounded on this stuff. I'm gonna.
Well, dude, we forgot.
Yeah.
Oh
my gosh, Alain Delon.
The Frenchman, Alain Fabien Maurice Marcel Delon. His name is even ridiculously beautiful. He was beautiful. His name is beautiful. He was a hell of an actor. What the hell, dude?
Alain Delon and everybody like Peter de Bruges, our variety film critic, our colleague with LAFCA, wrote a wonderful summary of why Le Samurai is just one of the greatest films ever made and why it's his greatest performance. Here's the thing about Alain Delon, and our friend Francesca's been posting pictures of him all day. He was beautiful. And you don't say that about a lot of men.
No.
He was beautiful, and not in like an effeminate way, but truly he was masculine and beautiful. There's something about his face, his eyes, his presence, the lips. There's something about the whole package that is just, it's unparalleled in screen history. The way the camera loves that face, it's like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah, as opposed to Star of Breathless. You don't know. Belmondo. As opposed to Belmondo,
right?
He's a real. Yeah, Belmondo had a crooked nose. He looked like the boxer that he was when he was a young man.
Belmondo is a more typical French actor, like Depardieu, like Daniel Auteuil, who have these very gnarled peasant faces with character in them, and so that is a certain look. But Delon was not that.
No,
it was almost like he had been sculpted by Michelangelo or something. It was astounding, and he had the talent to back it up.
Oh yeah, right? It left him. He was able to play that guy in Purple Noon.
Yeah,
that sociopath. Which look, I enjoyed Ripley, and there's even a TV Ripley now, and I enjoyed all of those. But Purple Noon, that's where it is.
Yeah, I was watching that the other night on Criterion Channel.
Oh yeah, I think I saw you. I thought we were. So extraordinary, just absolutely extraordinary. Yeah.
Wow. Well, there we go. We're done with the obits. I am going to blow through some catalog material here really quickly because this is piled up and everybody just really should know what's out there. So first, I'm going to go through all the MGM stuff. The MGM library is being released rather rapidly and precipitously again. All of these are Blu-rays except for this one. I don't know why they would choose to not release a Blu-ray of William Shatner in Kingdom of the Spiders. I don't. This is on DVD. It should be on Blu-ray. I want this on a Blu-ray. William Shatner, Kingdom of the Spiders, really one of the most wonderfully campy bad movies I have ever seen. The scene where it's like, look, tarantulas don't really hurt anybody, but for some reason they're big and hairy, so they freak everybody out. My favorite scene in this is where William Shatner opens the window at exactly the right moment for just a ton of spiders to drop on him as if they are instantly stinging him to death. The second they hit him, he doesn't go, ew, gross, get off me. No, the second they hit him, he goes into Star Trek mode and he goes, ah! Like he does, like in the Man Trap when the salt creature is putting his fingers on his face, or any other time that he's being tortured, by anybody. That wonderful William Shatner scream. It's brilliant. It's so I can't get enough of that movie. On Blu-ray, we also have Into the Blue, which understands that there is both the artwork on the front and the back of this is the only thing that tells look, all you need to know, there's no story here. The only reason to see this is if you are compelled by Paul Walker's abs and Jessica Alba's bikini body. That is the movie. That is the marketing. That is the only reason to see it. May he rest in peace, Paul Walker. Yeah. Tony Richardson's Mademoiselle, starring Jeanne Moreau, really a very underrated but terrific movie. Wonderful post New Wave, kind of post-angry young man combination there with Tony Richardson working with Jeanne Moreau, and a script by Jean Genet. Absolutely, really just very intense, very erotic, well worth seeing, well picking up. Harold Hecht's The Way West with Kirk Douglas, Robert Mitchum, and Richard Widmark. Kind of a forgotten Western, but not a great one by any means. But it's
Andrew V. Anyway, Andrew V.
Yeah, Andrew V. McLaughlin, the Western veteran director. This one, it's not bad. It's probably more of a rental than anything else, but it has its following. Strange Invaders is a wonderful old science fiction invasion throwback. It feels very much like a movie from the 1950s, made in the 1980s. Weird to me is that this movie, the 50s were like, we thought in the 80s, like, oh, the 50s was so long ago. This movie is older now than the movies it's riffing on were at the time it was made. I mean, this movie's 40 years old now, so that's weird to me. But what I had not realized was, do you know the writers who wrote one of the writers?
Bill Condon,
was a co-writer of this. I had no idea.
Everybody starts somewhere, baby. Yeah,
man. It's but you know what? Here's what's interesting. Bill Condon, of course, as we know from starting with Gods and Monsters and all the way to the present, very much a connoisseur of old movies, old Hollywood. He knows the territory, right? He even did the intro to Stephen Farber's book on 1962. So Bill Condon, really a film historian, and this is riffing on those science fiction movies of the 50s. I mean, very effectively. It's a wonderful script. Strange Invaders, really, really a fun film. I don't know whatever happened to Michael Laughlin, who directed it, but we know what happened to Bill Condon, who Revolt at Fort Laramie, kind of another, middling Western in the MGM United Artists library. It's okay, not a great cast, not a lot of names in the cast, but good music by Les Baxter. A little bit anachronistic, but also produced by Howard Koch, Hawk Koch, and it fills a niche.
Good B actors. A lot of good B actors in that movie.
Good. It's a solid B. Yeah, it's a solid B movie. Better than B is the rather pretty good Delmer Davies movie, Kings Go Forth, with Frank Sinatra, Tony Curtis, and Natalie Wood. Not the best movie for all of them, but a pretty great movie to have all of them in. Actually, Frank Sinatra is always, solid in all of his performances. Natalie Wood, my favorite actress probably of all time. And Delmer Davies does a better than average job directing it. And there is a wonderful Elmer Bernstein score that is just to die for. Hour of the Gun, one of the underrated OK Corral movies, with James Gardner as Wyatt Earp and Jason Robards as Doc Holliday. I know everybody loves Tombstone, and some people are a little more iffy on Wyatt Earp. I like Wyatt Earp, which I like a lot. I like them both. But you know what? This is a really good movie too. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jason Robards is a really good Doc Holliday. He's better than Val Kilmer for my money. But my favorite OK Corral is still the Star Trek episode, Hour of the Gun. Yep. Or Spectre of the Gun. Spectre of the Gun.
Yeah, whether in that Western set, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very, very smart
concept. Yeah,
that was cool. But no, this is really great. Hour of the Gun is terrific. John Sturges directed. Jerry Goldsmith does the music. Great screenplay by Edward Anhalt. It's a little too short for its own good. But I still like it. I think it's really good, and it's pretty darn accurate. David Mamet's Oleana out on Blu-ray. Quite nice. He did the screenplay based on his own play, and it's a David Mamet film. So if you're a fan of Oleana, you'll love it. If you're not, then you won't. The Playboys is a movie I was very fond of. Aidan Quinn, Robin Wright, Albert Finney. This is just a beautiful Irish love story. Gillies McKinnon directed it. I think Gillies McKinnon is a wonderful director. He did some great films right when we were starting with Entertainment Today, and then his career just went nowhere for suddenly. I don't know why. But pretty great little movie. I think everybody's really solid in it.
Young Robin Wright, 1992 Robin Wright. Get out of here.
She's great. And Aidan Quinn, he's perfect.
Yeah, young Aidan Quinn, get out of here.
It's just everyone does the accents beautifully. It's Albert Finney is just to die for. Of Mice and Men, the second film version with John Malkovich and Gary Sinise. Yeah. Directed by Gary Sinise. This was at the Cannes Film Festival in my first year in 1992. And it was in competition. I remember the press conference with Gary Sinise so well. And what was so surprising and impressive to everybody was that John Malkovich is the last person you'd expect to cast for Lenny. He just is. He's not big and lumbering, and he's not, like My Little Bunny Rabbit. He's not doing the shtick, right? He does it very differently. He Malkoviches it, and it works.
It
works.
He's a little menacing. A late performance from Ray Walston. He was really great in that movie.
Oh,
and a really beautiful. I remember going to the premiere of that movie way back in 92. And I saw it at one of the theaters we were just talking about, the Village.
Yeah,
and that big scene at the end when the fields are on fire was just absolutely beautiful. Yeah. This would have been a beautiful film, obviously in 92. And Gary Sinise really did an excellent job directing that movie.
It's why I wish Gary Sinise would direct more, because he really has a great eye. And it's been over 30 years now. I think he's done one film since, He's a talented director. He should do more. And then the last in the MGM stack is Betrayed with Deborah Winger and Tom Berenger, directed by Costa Gavras, who is a wonderful man. I've done a DVD commentary with him, and written by Joe Esterhaas, who is literally doing the exact same thing that he did in Music Box, that he did in Basic Instinct, that he did in Jade. This is the exact same plot all over again. The thing that sets this apart for me is that my dear departed friend Richard Libertini has a great cameo at the beginning where he gets executed. But Richard plays. It begins with a lot of people will remember, and I should have researched the name of it. The Jewish radio guy who was killed in a white supremacist attack.
Oh yeah, I remember that
back in the early 80s, I think it was. Anyway, that is the character that Richard Libertini plays at the beginning of this, which is kind of like a riff on a real life event that dovetails into that whole KKK thing that happens now with Berenger and Deborah Winger. But that is also the same character that was at the center of talk radio, the Oliver Stone film. Eric Bogosian plays the same character. So when you see Betrayed and you see the Richard Libertini character at the beginning, just remind yourself, same character that Eric Bogosian was playing in talk radio. It's an interesting little.
They, like I said, they represent that actual guy. Yeah, that late night talk radio guy. Yeah.
Ignite Films has released the story of G.I. Joe, which has needed to be out for so long, restored by the Film Foundation from 1945, a bunch of great bonus features on here. The thing that is most significant about this, apart from the fact that it has one of Robert Mitchum's best all-time performances, great war movie, really a great World War II movie, but this has one of the all-time great performances by Burgess Meredith.
Yep.
And what's incredible is Burgess Meredith is like, 32, 33 in this thing? He still looks like he's 75.
He looks like he's, it doesn't matter at all.
It's amazing. You're like, the guy's been, like Mark used to say this. He goes, Burgess Meredith, he's been 80 years old for 50 years. That's a great line. I love that. Anyway, story of G.I. Joe has needed to be out in a really nice, pristine Blu-ray for a long time. And this it is. And they've got a reconstruction of the original trailer and photos and a wonderful audio commentary.
It's about Ernie Pyle. The correspondent, if people don't remember Ernie Pyle, but he was a Pulitzer Prize winning war correspondent. Yeah.
Yes, and it's a great story. It's a really, really great story. Let's see what else we got here. We've also got a film that I have to personally recommend enormously from the Milestone Cinematheque, Billy Woodbury's "Bless Their Little Hearts," which is
my God, yes.
one of the great American movies of the modern age, from 1984,
out of the L.A. Rebellion period.
L.A. Rebellion, Billy Woodbury, one of my own Bruins, right out of the UCLA, restored by the UCLA Film and Television Archive. And here's the thing, I've told this story before, but I will tell it again about Billy Woodbury. And by the way, I should apologize to listeners before I forget about the last show, which wound up going dangerously out of sync. We haven't fixed that yet. I don't know if we're going to be able to. We were trying to use a new service going with Riverside, which I've been doing the Hollywood Heretic podcasts on, and it doesn't like to synchronize audio without video. So I apologize to the listeners for that on the last show. We're back to Zencastr, keeping things in sync. Yeah. But Billy Woodbury made "Bless Their Little Hearts" in 1984. And then flash forward a few years, and 1988, 89, I'm at UCLA Film School, and I'm there's this guy working there. He's Billy, and he's one of the guys that I go and I rent equipment from.
The equipment guy, yeah.
And he's part of the staff, right? He's part of the film school, administrative staff. And at one point, my buddy Chris, who's a very successful commercial producer right now, Chris pulls me aside and he goes, "You know who that is, right?" I'm like, "Who? Billy? Billy somebody?" He goes, "Don't you know Billy? Billy has had movies in film festivals. That guy is a world-class filmmaker." Like, "Billy?" He goes, "That's Billy Woodbury." And I go, "Billy, like L.A. Rebellion, Billy Woodbury?" Like, he goes, "Yeah, that's Billy Woodbury." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And he's so unassuming, right? Mm-hmm. But it was that moment when this is part of the story of the L.A. Rebellion, right? They did not come out and make USC commercial movies. They made movies that went to film festivals, that made a statement, that did not find their audiences immediately. And Billy got to pay the bills working at UCLA. Yeah, but. You know what? This movie, here it is on Blu-ray. It has come around. It is widely respected now. It is part of the. It is archived at the Library of Congress as an American classic, and it is a profound film. It is a
film that matters. About a family in Watts. Charles Burnett, of course, wrote that movie, and Charles Burnett, of course, another figure from the L.A. Rebellion that would go on to make to Sleep with Anger and all of that. But he also did the Glass Shield, which was a fairly commercial film. Charles Burnett.
I mean, Charles, the glass, yes. It's a great bunch of people from that whole movement. It is historic, and there's a great workshop on here with Billy Woodbury from the Indiana University Black Film Center and Archive. There is an interview with Ross Lipman and an interview with Ed Guerrero, and behind the scenes photos that Billy furnished to them himself. All of this is on here, including the 1980 film The Pocketbook, which was Billy's very first film, which is really interesting. But Bless Their Little Hearts is just a wonderful family drama that it's one of those amazing independent films where you almost forget that there's a film crew there. It feels so intimate. It feels so inside their lives. So inside the sense of place and time. It's a truly, truly beautiful film. It's wonderful. And I cannot, I am happy to be able to recommend it without reservation.
I don't want to push this off because I know it, but it's always been fascinating to me that those cats working on the West Coast here in that period, doing the LA Rebellion thing. So Billy and Charles and Julie Dash and all of these folks, right? Now they were basically doing the equivalent of what about at the same time, give or take a year or two, that Jim Jarmusch and Spike Lee and a few other significant filmmakers were doing on the East Coast in the early 80s, middle 80s. Yep. Now, just about all of those East Coast filmmakers went on to have fairly significant careers. Obviously, Jim and Spike, and and I've always wondered what the difference was. Like, how could these two? Is it just the place?
It is the place. It's, and having gone to UCLA, I can tell you that it is not uncommon for UCLA. I mean, that was always the running joke, right? USC produces the Ron Howards and the George Lucases and the John Carpenters who go right into making, very successful movies, and they emphasize and they want you working for the studios. And everybody at UCLA, they kind of drill it into you. It's like, you know what? You don't have to work for the studios. You don't have to make a commercial movie. You just make a movie from the heart. If that means going out into the jungle of Guatemala, making a black and white 16 millimeter movie that nobody sees, but that's your heart, man. That's what you do. And UCLA had that kind of alternative attitude, right? Like, we're not going to be USC. And look, you get your Alexander Paynes and your Francis Coppolas who come out of UCLA too, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like UCLA doesn't produce commercial filmmakers as well. And, but that was sort of what they taught to a lot of us. And so I think at the time the LA Rebellion was there, that was in fact, I know for a fact, because I know some of the professors that were teaching at that time too. And I'm still friends with some of the professors who taught them. And we've talked about this. It was late 70s, early 80s. It was a much more raw time. And the department kind of became a lot more polished and forward thinking when I was there, and continue to do so for the next few years. But boy, the late 70s, early 80s at UCLA was grit. It was all about grit and personal stories. And I think that's why. And LA is just not a friendly place for those kinds of movies. New York is. Yeah. New York is. It just is. And Another Girl in the IRT, and
Leslie
sidewalk stories.
Matty Rich's story,
right? You can go on and on and on with all the great little indie films that kind of came out from New York, right? And Jarmusch gave us Tom DiCillo, right? Yeah, and my wife worked on a Tom DiCillo film. Yeah. I was there in New York with my wife when she was working on that Tom DiCillo film.
Michael Pitt film,
what was it? 2005. I want to say. And New York is a place that embraces that kind of indie filmmaking, and LA doesn't really. So I think that's the lesson. That's why Spike stayed there. He stuck it out. That's why he stuck it out. A few others here really quickly. Terra Firma by Jake McPherson is out on Blu-ray. Kind of a cult classic. It's worth checking out. That's from MVD Visual. We also, a lot of people focus on Paul Blart Mall Cop, not realizing that a much darker version of the exact same movie came out around the same time, Observe and Report, with Seth Rogen. That is out now from Shout Select. Boy, this movie is creepy and dark, and this is This is Paul Blart Mall Cop minus all of the obvious jokes with some very, very dark taxi driver like edges to it. But it's a nice contrast, right? It's a nice contrast between the two films. I recommend that they be shown as a double feature just to freak people out.
Which one do you want? Which one do you want first?
Watch Paul Blart Mall Cop first.
You gotta watch that first.
You will not be able to sleep after seeing this one. It'll get inside your head and never let go. I have to say, the other one from Shout Select, I jumped up and down when this came. I am so happy that somebody had the guts. God bless you, Shout Select, for having the guts to go out there and say, you know what? Death to Smoochy is a good movie, and we're going to put it out on Blu-ray.
Dude, you get no argument out of me.
This is just such a great movie. Danny DeVito directed it. It is so freaking dark. Talking about dark. I mean, this is just, Danny DeVito can go dark, but Edward Norton and Robin Williams are just.
You're right, Edward, Catherine King. Dude, there was a moment when these movies, and this movie, we love this movie now. This movie does not make a nickel.
Because people, you know what, they marketed it wrong. Because people thought, it's a movie about kids' television. No, it's not. It is.
It was like this around the same time. What did you have? The ice harvest or something like that. It was like a Christmas movie. It was like a Harold Ramis's Christmas movie, which was just this vicious fucking movie. But it was this Christmas movie, and people did not. They were like, "Whoa, what did we do?" And Death to Smoochy, yeah.
I mean, basically, Robin Williams plays a kid's television. He plays Barney the dinosaur, except it's not Barney the dinosaur. Yeah. But he plays the equivalent of Barney the dinosaur, kids television. But he is vicious and profane and mean and hateful. And that's the beautiful irony: is that the guy inside the suit is just the worst human being imaginable. And Edward Norton is the exact opposite. He is just loving being a kid's character, and it gets into these like kids television wars. And I mean, there is some stuff in this thing that is so cynical and so dark and so hilarious. It brings me to tears. It's really, really hilarious. It's great. Bloopers and outtakes really lighten the affair a lot. Behind the scenes stuff.
Resnick is Adam Resnick is what? I know he was a David Letterman guy.
Yeah, Adam Resnick, who wrote it, yes.
Who wrote that? I know he was a Letterman guy, but a bunch of other, maybe SNL. I know he was a Letterman guy.
It's such a good script.
Larry Sanders Show, that's what it was. He's a Larry Sanders guy, so that's the thing. Yeah.
So Danny DeVito and his cinematographer do an audio commentary that is just wonderful. It's just absolutely wonderful. They have interviews with everybody from composer David Newman to actor Danny Woodburn to the costume designer Jane Room. It's just wonderful. It's really wonderful. Death to Smoochy it's finally out on Blu-ray. This thing's just been dying on DVD for years. I cannot be more grateful. Eureka, by the way, which is both in the United States and in the UK now. They're bridging the two. They have released, and you can get it here as an import, Laurel and Hardy: The Silent Years. 1927. Their last spate of silent shorts right before they became sound comedians. And they bridged that gap better, I think, than anyone else. Better than Chaplin, better than Keaton or any of the rest of them. They got it. Most of us remember Laurel and Hardy as an early sound duo, but they were a silent duo first. Anyway, this is a wonderful set, part of the Masters of Cinema collection. A must-have if you are a Laurel and Hardy completist. And then some Warner Archive stuff.
If I can, you know why they were able to bridge that gap so nicely? You'll notice that when Laurel and Hardy move into talkies, they still don't talk that much.
It's true.
They don't just start. They start talking. It doesn't. They don't start doing bits and routines. It's mostly still physical comedy with Foley now, and then occasionally they say something, and then they add a little more and they add a little, but they never stop doing physical comedy. Not at all. It's true. Mostly still silent films that they're doing, and it didn't irritate people.
It's great. It's just wonderful. It's wonderful to put the whole history together. And then we got a whole great batch from the Warner Archive collection. I'm going to go through it in order in my hand here. Elvis in Harem Scarum, which is not one of the great Elvis movies, but it was produced by Sam Katzman, who was a great kind of schlockmeister. Has Michael Ansara in it, who basically was at the time married to Barbara Eden. Yeah. And that's why when you watch the I Dream of Jeannie reruns, Michael and Sarah shows up as every ethnic character on I Dream of Jeannie. Literally every single one. God. It's hilarious. It's really, really funny. Ethnically Turk, but he was like, so in the 1960s, you're like, oh, that guy's kind of dark skinned. He
played Mexicans. Oh, he played Russians.
Arabs, Russians, you name it. He was anything even remotely ethnic. And Michael and Sarah played. So anyway, he is wonderful. But Elvis is Harem Scarum. It's a terrible title, but it's okay. Gary Cooper in Friendly Persuasion. William Wyler's wonderful, brilliant movie. Incomparable. Has just unbelievable supporting cast in this thing. Anthony Perkins, very first role. He's just magnificent as well. Really, really great movie. William Wyler just absolutely nails it. Based on a terrific novel. Audrey Hepburn in The Nun Story, Fred Zinnemann film. Just another great classic. Nobody really believes Audrey Hepburn is a nun. You're like, it's Audrey Hepburn wearing a habit, but it doesn't matter. It's wonderful. And Fred Zinnemann directed it, and it's just a great movie. Robert Ryan and Van Heflin in Act of Violence, another Fred Zinnemann movie that is pretty great. Nice, good, solid noir. Zinnemann not really known for noirs necessarily, but this was one of his best. Mary Astor was just terrific.
Janet Leigh, young Janet Leigh,
yeah, this is just good stuff. Frank Borzage directed Joan Crawford and Margaret Sullivan in The Shining Hour, also starring Robert Young and Melvin Douglas. Another really good, solid melodrama of the period. 1938. Really, just Joan Crawford, just incomparable, absolutely wonderful. And then the last of the Warner titles here is Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Carol Lombard and Robert Montgomery, directed by the very capable Alfred Hitchcock. This is one of Hitchcock's more kind of unusual films, made for RKO in 1941. He wasn't quite the thriller guy yet. He was just coming off of Rebecca and trying to get Selznick out of his system. And so this is kind of an in-between film, but it's really, really lovely. It's wonderful. It's a great kind of it's a screwball comedy. It's a romantic screwball comedy, right? And but it's in the Hepburn Tracy mold, but you're doing it with Lombard and Montgomery, and it's great. It's
Lucy and Ricky would go on the Bite it 20 years later for
that's right.
The whole Lucy and Ricky run. It was so
it's great. And then some wonderful stuff from Paramount. We got Swingers on Blu-ray finally.
Oh wow!
Jon Favreau, and Vince Vaughn and a very young Heather Graham who hasn't aged a single day in like 30 years. It's bizarre.
Is it Doug Liman or Lehman? I always get his name wrong.
Lehman. I keep hearing Lehman. I did Lyman for years, and then everybody kept correcting me, and it's Lehman. So it's Doug Lehman. Doug Lehman's
it's just his career. I mean, I love Doug. His great movies, but if you had told me the guy who directed Swingers, this little wicked, wonderfully written film, is going to go on to make all some of the the really big and some dumb, but really big movies that he. I've been like, why? No, that's not that guy.
Including the other Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which has nothing to do with the one that we just mentioned.
Yeah, the Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie thing. Yeah. That's just, I don't know. You wouldn't enjoy it. That's weird. If you told me that Jon Favreau was going to be the director that came out of that whole grip of guys, if you had told me that Jon Favreau was going to be the actual biggest Hollywood mogul of them, I don't know, man. It's so weird that we came up through all of that and watched all of that happen.
The stuff that we've been witness to is
just really just fantastic.
So strange. Peter Weir's Witness, starring Harrison Ford in one of his very best performances. Great movie. Really a terrific film. So important. Peter Weir has officially announced his retirement. Breaks my heart, but all good things come to an end, I guess. Really just superb with Kelly McGillis. The barn raising scene in this thing with that Maurice Jarre music is just one of the most poetic pieces of cinema I've seen in the last 50 years. It's just,
and again, this is a movie now, a beautiful movie, and you could make this movie now, but it wouldn't be a theatrical release now.
You're probably
even with a big movie star like Harrison Ford and all those people today, it would be probably a limited series.
Yeah,
about it. That's what, as opposed to this thrilling movie. Danny Glover in that movie, man.
Right.
Danny Glover in that movie is just whoa. What an impact.
Yeah. And then The Peacemaker with George Clooney and Nicole Kidman is out on Blu-ray again. This is Mimi Leder, who had a great career on TV, and she's on TV again. But she broke out from her TV career on China Beach and ER and all the other great stuff she was doing to do this really terrific action movie with George Clooney and Nicole Kidman. Good spy film, has a chase scene in it that's still one of the best chase scenes I've ever seen in a movie. And it didn't do great. I think it got treated poorly. Mimi Leder, being a woman who directs action, does get held to a higher standard, unfortunately. But it is still a film worth checking out, worth rediscovering. That chase scene is just not to be believed. It's really just beautifully executed.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Clooney's work in this film is what got him that Batman suit.
You're probably right. Yeah, I can see that. I can totally see that for sure. Dwayne Johnson and Billy Bob Thornton made a movie called Faster when nobody was paying attention, directed by George Tillman Jr., whom I've met because he's friends with our friend Tina, because Tina did rewrites on the family film.
Soul Food.
Soul Food. Thank you. Soul Food. Big Mama. Anyway, George Tillman, wonderful director, a pretty good movie, but nobody really paid attention to it at the time. I'm not quite sure why. This was made 14 years ago now. Gee whiz, 2010. But yeah, it's a good, solid early Dwayne Johnson actioner, and Billy Bob Thornton is holding it down. What's he done lately?
Yeah. Well, Billy was on that lawyer show over on Hulu for a few seasons.
TV. They're all going to TV.
Yeah.
They're all disappearing into TV shows and streaming shows that I'm not watching because I'm not watching TV.
Yeah.
Anyway, on DVD, before I get to the last Paramount title here, on DVD, not on Blu-ray, we've got The Monster Squad, which has a cult following. I never quite understood it. Richard Edlund did some good special effects, some nice Stan Winston makeup effects. It's kind of cute. It's a little bit for kids, not really my speed, but 1987 has a cult following. That's out on
Shane. I still blows me away that Shane Black is one of those writers.
I know, it's weird, right?
It's just a Shane. Okay, but yeah,
kind of phoning it in. And then The Lovely Bones with Saoirse Ronan, directed by Peter Jackson, right after the Lord of the Rings films didn't really pan out, and then he went around and he did the Hobbit films immediately. He got cold feet. Lovely Bones, based on a novel, not a great movie, but not a bad movie. It's just kind of an unusual movie. And wrote it with Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens, the same team that did the Lord of the Rings films. But Mark Wahlberg shows up in this, oddly enough. So does Susan Sarandon. It's not a bad Stanley Tucci. It's not a bad cast. Saoirse Ronan is truly wonderful. I just think it's a tough story to sell.
Yeah. Look, that book was very popular.
Yeah.
I found it difficult to read, and I found this an even more difficult movie to watch. The underlying theme of the movie is about a little girl who's been murdered. So we're starting in this extremely bleak place, and it gets darker from there.
Oh, boy, does it ever. And then the last of the Paramount films is pretty great. And I didn't used to think it was pretty great, but my wife convinced me on penalty of death. It is number 42 in the Paramount Presents series. It is, of course, the Academy Award-winning Terms of Endearment, which I did not forgive at the time because it beat The Right Stuff. And I kind of blamed it for the fact that The Right Stuff didn't win anything and that Yentl didn't get all the nominations it deserved. But you know what? Terms of Endearment, for a nice victory for everyone involved. It really was. James L. Brooks the last time that a first-time director, I think, won, or no, Coster for Dances with Wolves.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah.
But anyway, putting out actors, James L. Brooks, first-time director on this thing, coming out of television. Shirley MacLaine, Deborah Winger, Jack Nicholson, amazing. It's all-time classic. So there you go. And then blow through a few of these last ones here. We have from Flickr Alley, a couple of really terrific ones from Flickr Alley. Herbert Kline in a Darkened Europe is from the Museum of Modern Art collection. It is part of the MoMA library. And it's a couple of restorations here of Crisis, a film of the Nazi way, and Lights Out in Europe, which, Herbert Kline did some pretty amazing work just before and after World War II, chronicling what was going on in Europe, and he's kind of been forgotten a little bit. So this was underwritten and restored by the Sunrise Foundation for Education and the Arts and the National Center for Jewish Film, and it really fills in some essential blanks in chronicling this horrible, horrible, painful period in the world. Grew a lot of great bonus material on it. It's pretty terrific. So this is Against the Storm, Herbert Kline in a Darkened Europe, Crisis, a film of the Nazi way, and Lights Out in Europe, thanks to MoMA significantly.
Yeah, we're talking about 39 and 40.
38 to 40, basically.
Yeah,
38.
So we're really he's anticipating, he's watching, he's seeing, and chronicling.
And filling in blanks that no one else was doing at the time. It was, it's really some essential kind of documentary journalism that without which we would be much the poorer. And then Flickr Alley has also released Never Open That Door, which is this kind of fascinating Spanish language noir. No abras nunca esa puerta. There's my terrible Spanish for you. I don't speak Spanish. I'll fake the accent now and again. No, but this is an Argentine noir from 1952, and really very, very good. Compares incredibly well with Hollywood noirs, and it's a wonderful rediscovery, and it's a great all region. You can get this thing and play it anywhere you want. Also loving the director's Spotlight release from Mill Creek, which includes two absolutely terrific Sidney Pollack films that we always forget about, because we always think, oh, Sidney Pollack, he's the guy in Eyes Wide Shut who directed Tootsie and Out of Africa. Yeah, but you know what? He also made Castle Keep with Burt Lancaster and Bobby Deerfield with Al Pacino. And those are pretty great movies. I love racing movies. Pretty much any movie with a guy in a racing car, I love it. I'm sorry, Rush and, Le Mans, and I love them all. They're all great. So Bobby Deerfield totally works for me. Loving Al Pacino in the racing movie, and Burt Lancaster with an eye patch and in a war movie. Yeah, I'll do that. I'm there. Sidney Pollack, all-time classic. It's a double feature. You cannot go wrong with those. Woody Allen's Coup de Chance, his new film in French, shot in France. Mark came back from France and said, you got to see it. It's really good.
Yeah,
he's right. It's really good.
I have not seen
it. It's really good. Woody nails it. It's not a comedy. It's well,
they're all self-reflective, so I guess that's
it's more like Match Point. It's more in the vein of Match Point. Yeah, it's that. It's Woody kind of going dark and being arty and kind of getting his Bergman on a little bit more, a little bit of a Hitchcock thing. No, it's really good. I mean, I love Lou Delage. I think she is just gorgeous and wonderful and charming and impossibly magnificent in French movies. And I think her casting here is just perfect. And so is the rest of the cast. So Woody nails it. He nails it. The movie never got a proper theatrical release in the U.S., and that's too bad, but it's really good. Another double feature here from Mill Creek is Once Around and Evening. Once Around is a little bit painful right now because I think we forgot one other obit, Tim.
Jenna! Of course. Forgot about Jenna.
They were dropping like flies this last week, and forgot to put Jenna in. So we're going to do Jenna right now. Jenna Rollins in Once Around. It's not a great movie, but she is great in it with Danny Aiello and obviously Richard Dreyfuss and Holly Hunter and a really pretty terrific cast overall, directed by Lasse Hallström. Evening, is kind of the ringer film here. Evening is fine. It's a big, gooey cast. Meryl Streep and Glenn Close and Vanessa Redgrave and Natasha Richardson. It's like, I mean, they just got everybody into Evening, and it's a little bit turgid and overloaded with talent. But Once Around, it's a good double feature. Once Around is worth watching, and Jenna Rollins is magnificent. How much do we love Gena Rowlands?
You just exquisite, Jenna. Her association, of course, with her husband John, in all of those movies from back in the day. They're running under the influence. A Woman Under the Influence. Just every 5 minutes now. And she's exquisite in that. The thing about Jenna was around for so long, we forget that when you go way, 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 way back to those black and white faces and things like that, Jenna was ridiculously beautiful. Frankly, right through all of those movies. Now, when Jenna hits the early 80s, and she does that movie Gloria, about the little Puerto Rican kid and the hitman and the mob and all that kind of stuff, and that is just, it's like she just reignites her career, and then she gets another 40 years out of it.
It's astounding. It's astounding.
Yeah, great.
Truly one of the great American actresses of all time. Just astounding. And I mean, I still love her in Paul Mazursky's Tempest, where she and her husband played the husband and wife. I mean, it's for another director. She's so good in that. I mean, it's not even her movie. It's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, and then did good work with her boy over there too. The Notebook. Nick.
Is your vehicle stopping like it should? Does it squeal or grind when you brake? Don't miss out on summer brake deals at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly
Auto Parts.
So
your husband, the son, Jenna,
and the thing in Tempest too is that Susan Sarandon's in that movie as well. So John Cassavetes is with Jenna at the beginning of the film, and then the marriage blows up, and he winds up on the island with Molly Ringwald as his daughter, and playing his mistress, Susan Sarandon, and yet Jenna is this powerful figure that overwhelms all of them. She really does. It's just an extraordinary movie. And then another one from Shout Select, Who's That Girl? Madonna and Griffin Dunne, a movie that has somehow lingered in the weirdest way. Along with Desperately Seeking Susan, somehow Madonna got like a lot of traction out of a handful of movies early in the 80s. And this is 87, so this is late in the 80s. But,
what I liked about Who's That Girl for Madonna is that she's playing this completely wacky character that is in no way, shape, or form Madonna. Not the Madonna of that period. She's just it's almost as nutty as the character that she plays in the other one that she did with her husband of the time, Shanghai Surprise, with Sean Penn. She had a couple of these movies where she was just sort of like swinging it, and do they work? No, they but I appreciated that. Later in her acting career, she would try to play these sort of serious, characters, that Lena Wertmuller adaptation and your Body of Evidence and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, no. But anyway, she never really had the acting career that she might have had if she just kept playing sort of ditzy blondes because they were.
That's kind of true. And lastly, Classic Flicks originally was going to release Meet John Doe in 4K and sadly did not find enough support among you consumers, so they released it in Blu-ray. And I think that's a tragedy. So listen, people, stay alert. And when you hear about a classic movie like Meet John Doe announced for 4K, contingent upon pre-orders and getting some support from people, get in the queue. It's not going to happen without support because a lot of these movies, they got to know that it's worth doing. So Meet John Doe, we could have had on 4K if more people had shown interest, but they didn't. Gary Cooper, Barbara Stanwyck, great, wonderful Frank Capra production. Walter Brennan and, Eddie Arnold and supporting performances. It's just wonderful. It's one of Gary Cooper's landmark performances, and it should be out there in 4K. So accept the wonderful restoration from Classic Flicks. This is a Library of Congress film. But it should be on 4K. So next time, let's get a little more support going there. Why don't we dive into the 4Ks?
Yeah, man.
I'll start since I was just in Philly and got my picture taken next to the man and ran up the steps. I did. We ran up the steps. I ran up the steps twice. Christy ran up twice. Hero ran up twice in 90% humidity. Running up the damn rocky steps.
I'm surprised you made it back.
I know.
I'm surprised. Burgess Meredith still looking 80. Though he was only 50.
That's right. So true. So Sylvester Stallone's Rocky Ultimate Knockout Collection, which finally includes just about everything, because the last Rocky box set on 4K didn't have everything, and people complained. So now we get, count them up, Rocky, Rocky 2, Rocky 3, Rocky 4, Rocky 5. Everybody forgot about Rocky 5. Like Rocky 5. Yeah. And then Rocky Balboa. They just stopped numbering them. They're like, we're eventually going to move on and do, a whole side. We're going to go sideways and keep the story going. And there it is. So, we showed my daughter the original Rocky so that she would understand Philly, so that she'd kind of identify all the spots, and we could stand there in the middle of the main drag and say, look, remember when Rocky runs down this road early in the morning? This is the road. These are the steps. Run up the steps. Hold your arms up in the air like Rocky did. And we made her do all of that stuff. It was humiliating, but she'll never live it down. Anyway, you know what? Rocky holds up, man. It really does. Yeah. The first film, I saw it projected not too many years ago, and I thought this movie's kind of crappy. And I guess I've gotten sentimental in my old age because I think it holds up now. I like it again. It's weird. Yeah, but I still think Rocky 3 is still my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Still my favorite. Clubber, played by Mr. T.
Yeah, Clubber.
Eye of the Tiger. Eye of the Tiger, man.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Great. They reinvented. They understood that the Gonna Fly Now was very much of the 70s. We need some new music. We got to and Eye of the Tiger, the best montage in movie history. It's so good. So good. Anyway, 4K. It was a little glitchy. If you got this thing, you may have had some problems with Fandango at home. They've ironed it out. So I've only seen it on the discs. Haven't watched the digital versions yet, but it's pretty great.
How does Furiosa look?
Oh my gosh, dude! They're gonna do another black chrome release in a month or so. So there's gonna be another version of this coming out soon. But holy cow, did they really knock it out of the park? This is just more state of the. This movie has to get a second life on 4K. It just
for sure.
It's it really is. I mean, you and Mark and I just really loved it, and Nadeem was there. This was a great movie. Why did people not go to this? Was it just because this is not a Memorial Day movie? What's the deal?
Well, look, we talked about this on the show, the radio show, back when it came out, and this is this really strong film. The unfortunate thing is, and you mentioned it on the show, is this was a film conceived first, and then Glory Road. Conceived because they couldn't get this
Fury Road.
Sorry, yeah. And so they made that, and you can feel that in this film. I can feel that in this film. This film had a life in the mind and on the page prior to this. And so, what I recommend people do, these films have to eventually come out together in some sort of Steelbook or
yeah. There's. I mean, I still think, and they're saying now that because it didn't perform, that the third film that was going to be in the and I guess the next one is an actual sequel to Fury Road, unless he tells the story of Mad Max before Fury Road, but it doesn't. I think this was what brought us up to Fury Road. So,
which we know, yeah.
Anyway, the next one, they're saying, it's in jeopardy, but I still think he stands a good chance of getting it made.
Yeah. Look,
there
a lot of different ways, but you put them in a set, and the way you ought to watch them, if you happen to have been in a cave someplace and not been paying attention, but you still want to get your Mad Max, watch this one first. It's a very, very, very good film. This is a perfectly solid film. But if you watch this first and then you watch Fury Road, they play much better together in that order. This is good, and then you got to stop it in a certain spot, and then you watch the other movie, and that's the way these movies should be seen.
So, Deadpool and Wolverine is just burning up the box office, and people are saying, "Oh my gosh, Ryan Reynolds!" But I mean, it's not Ryan Reynolds. I mean, we love Ryan Reynolds. I love Ryan Reynolds. But we forget Ryan Reynolds also made If a few months ago, and that's now out on 4K. And I don't like this movie. I mean, and I'm sorry I don't like this movie because I like everybody in it. I mean, Lou Gossett Jr.'s last film, I'm sorry to say, Lou went out on If. That's the one. Lou. Steve Carell shows up for
John Krasinski directing and writing, of course. How did or does Hero feel about
it? She hasn't seen it.
No interest. Just did nothing.
No, it's just I'm trying to figure out why. Like in concept, the idea of imaginary friends, which are ifs, is a great idea for a movie. I mean, it really is. We can go all the way back to something like Harvey to sort of get inside the idea that is being explored here. And I salute John Krasinski for a lot of the, I mean, it's really going out on a limb here. He's doing something very different from what he did in A Quiet Place, and he's really kind of going out on a limb and stretching. And Ryan Reynolds is wonderful, and the visual effects are fine, but it's not. I don't know. It just doesn't come together. It's not charming. It's not innately charming. It's too busy. It's just too. It's just too. It's too much. And that's my problem with it. But there's a lot of extras on it, so enjoy. Gosh, I'll tell you, Furiosa looks good. It just looks so good, man. Yeah, it looks so good. I want to give a big shout out to Civil War. Not so much because of Civil War, which I think Alex Garland was very brave in what he tried to do here. He wanted to tell a modern day Civil War, America coming apart at the seams movie, without necessarily taking sides or even revealing what the sides are. And a lot of people kind of jumped on that, and they're like, well, I don't know what the government is. I mean, no one's saying Republican or Democrat or conservative or liberal or anything else. We know that one side was undermining democracy and the other side this and the other thing. Well, that's the tragedy. This shouldn't happen, and you're supposed to not really care about the sides. You're supposed to care about the fact that people let it happen. I will say this. The 6-part documentary here, Torn Asunder, Waging Alex Garland's Civil War, is phenomenal. And I say that because it is made by our very good friend, Charles de Lauzarica, longtime friend of the podcast, good friend of mine, somebody I was communicating with while he was doing this. And I know some of the hurdles that he had to clear to do this. And it's some of Charlie's best work. It really is. It is just, there is no one better doing behind the scenes stuff. There just isn't. And he really gets inside this movie and the process, and he puts you right on the front lines, so to speak. So even if you didn't care for the film, get it for Charlie's work. It's great. Absolutely great.
The doc is a part of the
extras.
Extras in the Blu-ray. Yeah,
extras on Civil War. Extras on Civil War. Got a steelbook here, 4K steelbook of The Last Unicorn, Tim.
My oh my.
This is one from the early 80s, right? It was the early, or was it early 90s? I'm losing track now.
82.
82.
Oh,
82. Yeah. Gosh, this movie feels like so
fast and breaking. Yeah.
So this was the attempt by the stop motion Rankin Bass team to do something more than even what they did in The Hobbit. They did a version of The Hobbit. This was to really kind of go full art, and they have some amazing voice talent.
Oh my gosh.
Young Jeff Bridges and Mia Farrow and Alan Arkin and Angela Lansbury. It's amazing. Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
But does this movie work? I don't know.
No, not really. But it is beautiful. You can see where influences things that would influence a decade later, My Little Pony and
that's a good call. You're right. It does.
Yeah. So sure.
Well, anyway, Orson Welles, Lady from Shanghai. It's been out a bunch of times. It's now out on 4K. It's great. Just go watch it. That's all I can tell you. It's got Movies Anywhere code on it, so you can add this thing to your Movies Anywhere digital locker. This has, so many great scenes on it, so many great famous shots. It's probably one of Orson Welles' most underrated movies because it is kind of one of his more commercial movies. It's one of his less overtly arty ones, but boy, it really, really works great. Rita Hayworth, with whom he was having an affair at the time.
Oh yeah,
you can kind of tell. You can sort of tell. But yeah, it's great. One of the classic films from Columbia at the time. I'm surprised that Columbia didn't include that in any of their kind of deliberate 4K box sets. Speaking of movies go ahead.
I mean, it's just another one of those things of where, the weirdest people show up in places. William Castle is one of the writers on that movie. And
that's right. That's right. You're right.
These people show up in the strangest places. It's like William Castle is one of the writers. Yeah.
So bizarre. Anyway, the Fall Guy. We talked about Furiosa. Let's talk about the Fall Guy, which was the first stinker of the summer that made everybody think it was going to be a bum season, and it hasn't been. But why did the Fall Guy not work? This is the extended cut, by the way. Has 2 versions of the movie, neither of which will appeal to anyone because no one has seen the TV series unless you're our age.
You got to be 50, 60 years old to have seen this series at the height, Lee Majors and all that back in the and to know therefore what a Fall Guy even is, because as young people we came to know that because Fall Guy's a stuntman in the movies and on television, and unless you watch that show about Fall Guys in the movie, then you don't know that. And so the title of this movie doesn't even make any sense to you. But you know what? I did not dislike this movie. I thought it was a charming movie.
It's a silly script, but it's a fun movie.
Yeah. And somehow if it could have disassociated itself from that television series, Whole and Complete. So, start with a new title. Don't call it that. you don't need to call it that. Nobody knows what you're talking about anyway. And call it something that makes sense for the crap that's going on in the movie, which is really just because Emily Blunt is just wonderful. She can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned.
She's great. Although I've got to say the career trajectory that she has in this thing. She's not a cinematographer becoming a super action film director. She's a camera operator. That doesn't happen.
No.
You go from camera operator to cinematographer, and then from cinematographer to director. Nobody gets promoted from camera operator to directing $150 million action films.
No. You got to be Jan de Bont. You operate the camera. You operate the camera, cinematographer, and then if you got a good eye, we might let you direct something once or twice.
That's it. So the Bikeriders, which would have been like a $5 million Marlon Brando exploitation film back in 1968, is now a big old Tom Hardy, Austin Butler, Jodie Comer studio release.
Flop.
I just can't.
I didn't like this movie at all. I just didn't like it.
Why I cannot, like I want the studios to take risks on original titles, on original scripts. I want them to take risks.
Big drama,
but not this. Why would they? What do you think was the driving appeal to this over at Universal? And Universal, I mean, look, Oppenheimer, give them props. They're taking risks. What was this risk about? What motivated this?
Assuming that the cast came later in the story, because this is an adaptation of a Danny Lyon sort of memoir from this photojournalistic memoir that he did way back in the 60s of these actual bikers, these Midwest biker clubs that were sort of coming in, like you just said. That's all a Marlon Brando thing. A little bit later, though. And so, this memoir of these people, this period, I suppose it looks sort of romantic and whatnot, particularly when you're reading it on the page. But what it results in, unfortunately, are a bunch of really dislikable characters. Good performances. Jodie Comer is particularly good in this. Austin Butler's kind of doing mean Elvis. he's doing angry biker Elvis in this, and I don't know which one he actually shot first, the Elvis or this. But
Elvis, it was Elvis first.
It was the Elvis that he shot first, so he doesn't seem to have shaken that off for this. But there is not a single likable character, and they all represent people, from this period.
Yeah.
In this whole movie, I don't like any of these people. They're all a bunch of jerk asshole bikers, and that is the underlying problem. Is that so? Maybe if you do this exact same movie, but somewhere in there are likable characters, maybe it works. Maybe it works. Maybe it's really just a movie about people that are terrible.
Except we just got through with like a decade and a half of Sons of Anarchy followed by Mayans MC.
Yeah.
Which scratched that itch. So why would you make a feature film that rehashes that exact same territory and not as compellingly?
Yeah.
That's what I don't get.
Midwestern Motorcycle Club called the Vandals. It is what it is. Yeah.
All right. We also have the 20th anniversary 4K Ultra HD Steelbook edition of Collateral with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx. Michael Mann directing on digital. And I remember at the time I hated the movie because it had that digital look. It was like digital cameras. And I could tell it was shot with digital cameras that just didn't have the range. And the neon looked like it was shot on video. And it drove me crazy. And they have fixed a lot of that on 4K. We have the tools now to make this film look the way it should look. I like it. I've got to be honest. Now that the camera and the photography is not distracting me, that they've fixed it a little bit, there's a lot going on in here. And I like that everyone's cast against type. I like that Tom Cruise is cast against type. I like that Jamie Foxx is cast against type. And that they really kind of get a chemistry going. They really get a rapport going. And, it probably one of the last films that actually had Peter Berg in it as opposed to behind the camera.
Oh, yeah.
Jade is in this, Mark Ruffalo. It's got a great supporting cast, too. So, yeah, I've kind of come around on this. I don't know how you feel about it, but I've kind of come around on this.
A lot of good performances in this movie. Tom is playing that guy, that hitman guy, and he's like you said, against type. He's a little bit of the Terminator. He gets into a little bit of a T2 kind of a situation, which I thought sort of went over the top a little bit. But the movie is a fun movie, and you're right. Michael Mann talked about using video. And then making LA, because downtown LA is a big chunk of this is downtown the airport, all that neon. So LA looks like LA, and he sort of works all those lights, that green, that fluorescent light look, but it does look like video. So it'll be interesting to see what it looks like now that it's been tweaked.
It looks less like video. That's what makes and it's less distracting. They've fixed a lot of that. So not all of it, not completely. There's still a few spots where you if you're looking for it, you know what to look for. It's there, but MVD has also released to us, courtesy of Arrow, the Mexico trilogy. Robert Rodriguez is El Mariachi, Desperado, and Once Upon a Time in Mexico. You know what? What's interesting about this is significantly how they were able to sweeten El Mariachi. I know everybody talks about El Mariachi made it for $5,000. Well, if you watch the original El Mariachi, and then you compare it to the $5,000 El Mariachi, and then you compare it to the $5,000 El Mariachi after it had $1.5 million of post-production added to it. It's a significantly better movie. So anyway, all of that is now out on 4K, so you can see the entire progression of Robert Rodriguez's saga there. And then Black Mass, Tim, with Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Is Whitey Bulger. I got a story on this, but first, we all kind of lived through the Whitey Bulger thing when he was, after many years on the run, he was tracked down here in Santa Monica, like 15 minutes from me. And we're like, oh my gosh. You could
see his condo from Mark's house.
No. True. That was true. And I'll tell you more momentarily. So anyway, Carrie, knowing what we know about Whitey, does Johnny pull Whitey off?
Well, look, this is what I appreciate about Johnny's performance here. And it is, I mean, Whitey was a guy who looked a certain way and wore these glasses. So, and so all of that's good and solid. But Johnny in this movie is playing somebody who's not that freaking pirate. And you're doing and those pirates. He's so Johnny got for once in a long time. Yeah. Johnny got a chance to just actually act.
You're right.
To perform. Yeah. And I deeply appreciated that, Yeah. And he kind of nailed Whitey. Which is interesting. And Whitey was an interesting guy. Whitey had spent some time at Alcatraz.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that shows up in this movie. So it's a pretty neat, solid little crime movie with Johnny Depp giving one of the few real legit performances of the last 15, 20 years since he started playing that pirate.
And there are a lot of great supporting performances here. I can point out people who have gone on to bigger things, people who have done bigger things prior to this. I mean, everybody from Corey Stoll, who I absolutely love. My favorite Corey Stoll thing, by the way, Corey Stoll as Hemingway in Woody Allen's Midnight in Paris. One of the best things ever. One of the best things ever. Anyway, Corey Stoll, Jesse Plemons, Kevin Bacon, Benedict Cumberbatch, Joel Edgerton. They're all in this. So, yeah, here's my Whitey story. So my dear friend, another deceased friend, Martin Zweibach, very dear friend. I ironically, I just saw Martin's stepson the other day at Disneyland. We happened to be there at the same time. His stepson, Marshall Moore, runs the ZIFF Film Festival in Utah, and has been, he was once film commissioner of the state of Utah. Anyway, he and I just bumped. We just happened to literally be at Disneyland at the same time. It was unbelievably weird. So Martin was one of the head writers on Kung Fu for years, made some great movies, wrote the final episode of Kung Fu, I think it was, and also most famous for making Me, Natalie. He directed Me, Natalie, and he also wrote The Ultimate Solution of Grace Quigley with Katharine Hepburn and Nick Nolte. Amazing. I met Martin coming back from the Cannes Film Festival in 1994. He and his wife Adrienne, and anyway, Martin and Adrienne, his wife, Marshall's mother, they lived in Santa Monica, not far from where Mark used to live. Mm-hmm. And after Whitey was arrested, Martin says to me, he goes, "That was our building." I said, "What?" He goes, "That was our building. I've seen Whitey get in and out of the elevator with their dog for years." I had no idea who that was. He goes, "That was why." He's like, "It's the weirdest thing. Whitey Bulger was in our building." It was surreal. He lived in the same building with Martin Zweibach.
That's so crazy.
It's the greatest story. It just freaks me out to this day. It's just.
And what's funny is the entire day, because after he was arrested, he was on the news a lot. Whitey.
Yeah.
You know what he looked like? He looked like Whitey Bulger.
I know.
He just walked around all day looking like Whitey Bulger, just like not even trying.
It which tells you, what that tells you? Nobody watches the news.
Nobody was at all. That was just hysterical.
Nobody watches.
This guy didn't even cut his hair different. He's wearing the same shades. For God's sake, that's just hysterical.
So Dario Argento presents a film by Lamberto Bava called Demons and Demons 2, both from Synapse 4K. You know what? These movies, they don't need me. I was like, okay, I wonder if they still have that, awful kind of 80s post-giallo kind of weird, like, you know what it looks like? Here's what these movies remind me of. These movies feel to me like a bunch of like Dario Argento and the Bavas and all the everybody who made those giallo movies in the 70s.
Yeah.
That they watched, and I have a story for this in a second, that they watched that they watched Michael Jackson in the John Landis directed Thriller video. and they said, "Damn it, Michael stole our shtick. Let's one up him." So they decided to make a 2-part zombie saga that tries to sort of one up what they were doing in Thriller. It's disgusting. The makeup is disgusting.
Oh,
but everything, it's ridiculous. But it's so over the top that I look at it, I'm like, oh, you're kind of doing Thriller, aren't you? You're like trying to one up Thriller. So that being said, one of the shows, I'm just going to put that away. They're both on 4K now. If you like this stuff, go knock yourself out. So one of the shows that we saw in New York, we went and saw MJ.
Oh,
which I had been hearing, I'd been hearing kind of mixed things. And I'm not a big fan of jukebox musicals, where it's all pre-existing music. But I figure, it's MJ. It's like it's Jackson 5 and Michael Jackson. You got to use the pre-existing music. So let's go see how it is. I get it. The Jackson family is involved. You're not going to get into, a lot of ugly stuff. It's going to be a little bit whitewashed, but fair enough. Let's just see how it is. It brought me to tears.
Oh, wow.
It brought me to tears because it is so, first of all, the guy who's starring in it, he nails the moves. When you nail the moves and you nail the moonwalk and you're just doing it, and we're sixth row, and I'm watching, and when it gets to Smooth Criminal, I was in tears because I love that song and I love that video, and I'm watching them do it almost like I'm watching Michael on stage, and it brought me to absolute tears. And then when Thriller, and they don't do it chronological order necessarily. So a lot of the Jackson 5 stuff is backloaded, and obviously the other stuff is front-loaded, but it's a flashback structure, right? So they get to play, Beat It is the very first thing that you watch. Beat It is the first number of the whole show. So when you get to Thriller, oh my gosh, they have the production design is amazing. It just explodes on the stage. I can't rave enough about it.
That's fantastic.
It's great. If you're in London or if you're in New York, go see MJ. It really is worth every single penny that you're going to pay for it.
It is not for the national, just starts on the national tour and now actually, but LA is not on the national tour.
It's not.
LA is not on the national tour.
Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird?
Yeah,
that is strange. Wow, that's unusual. I wonder why.
Yeah.
All right, and then the last two 4Ks here before we jump into Criterions or television or whatever else we got. Just Mercy with Michael B. Jordan and Jamie Foxx. Tim, I want to, I have my feelings about this. You tell me how you feel about this, because I know you have particular issues that are with movies that are about black men in prison. Because
Brothers in Prison. Look, you have to earn a Brothers in Prison movie for me. It's the way I like to say it. You just can't put it. And now this movie is about this Brian Stevenson, and what is bizarre is Michael B. Jordan literally looks like Brian Stevenson. Particularly, Brian Stevenson is the attorney, the civil rights defense attorney, who is at the center of this particular case and a number of very, very important sort of
he's a significant figure in the justice movement.
For death row prisoners and all kinds of things like that. Michael B. Jordan looked, particularly when Brian Stevenson was as young as he is in this film, and which is I think like the middle 90s or something like that. They literally, you could stand them next to each other. It's like, oh wow, that is bizarre. It's a very moving movie that tells this very true story about the character that Jamie Foxx is playing, about the man that Jamie Foxx is playing, a guy named Walter McMillan. And their work to try to get him exonerated and off death row. And so I deeply appreciate this movie. This one makes it over the bar for me. And it makes a story worth telling that I'm willing to endure. So this one gets over the bar. Absolutely, it does.
Yeah, it did for me too, kind of barely. And Destin Daniel Cretton, a filmmaker I like quite a bit, does a real solid job. The thing that got to me in this, and my wife, and this is a little bit unfair too. So as you know, my wife worked on Murder in the First years ago, which is more or less the same story and also a true story, right?
Oh yeah.
Kevin Bacon playing the guy who is eventually exonerated in that one, and it's almost exactly the same story. And that wasn't even the first of these. And if you look around, there are probably about 8 or 9 of these movies about a tough young attorney who gives it all to exonerate somebody who's wrongly convicted, and they all more or less follow the same beats. And I know it's unfair, because it's not like they're formulaic screenplays. Those are the beats of the justice system.
Yes, this is what happened, yeah.
So it's become kind of a genre. It's a little bit familiar, and I know it's unfair to hold that against these films. So I try to focus on the performances. Jamie Foxx is tremendous. I mean, he's always tremendous.
Well, these movies, if they're not already, they will become the sort of movies that will have a life in streaming. These will not be films,
right?
I mean, what was the one with Sean Penn, where he with Sister Helen Fraser on Dead Man Walking?
Dead Man Walking, another one.
Yeah. Or Tom Lee Jones from years and years and years ago. The adaptation of the what was it? Where he's
gosh, why are we forgetting the name of that title? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but he's in prison. The bird. That was a heavy movie. These sorts of movies, but I don't know that they will continue to be theatrically releasable, Academy Award nominatable sorts of films.
Great point. Also on 4K, Run Lola Run. Tom Tykwer, the movie that put Tom Tykwer on the map here. Unlike any other movie Tom Tykwer's ever made, kind of a gimmick of a movie, but man, it kind of was right in its moment, and it sort of holds up in a weird, eccentric way. I mean, watching it again, I'll be honest, like part of the joy of the movie the first time. And I remember I saw it like 10 o'clock show at the Nuart when it came out, and we didn't know what to expect. And we're like, is that it? It's going to be like the animated thing. And then the whole same running bit all over again, except just off by a few seconds so we can try to get it right the next time. Like I mean, it's a gimmick, but it works. And even if you know what's coming, it still has enough juice in the experimentation to still be interesting. So
layers and layers. Franco, of course, Franco is she's extraordinary in that red wig or whatever the hell she's wearing.
And that's part of it, right? It's the red hair. Yeah.
And she's running, and there's a certain energy, and she's willing time and space to allow her. It's really just this romance. I mean, there's this whole thing that's going on, but it's just this romance. It's about this girl who's going to do anything she can to save her boyfriend. And she's got to deal with her stupid father and all kinds of stuff. But it's just this girl who's running, and it's just really beautifully done. When you look at this movie today, I don't know that I thought about this all that much back in 98 when I saw the film, but visually, it really is just striking visually. Her red hair isn't the only very, very considered placement of colors. There's red vans and greens and blues. That palette is considered all the way through the film. And it just has this energy, and it's fantastic. I love this movie.
And then we got some new movies that are not on 4K, but they are on Blu-ray. And the first one is Ezra with Robert De Niro, Bobby Cannavale, and a young actor who is very good called William A. Fitzgerald. Plays this autistic kid. Bobby Cannavale is his dad. It's directed by Tony Goldwyn. Very, very tender and sweet and wonderfully directed. And what I love is that, number one, Robert De Niro takes a back seat to everybody else. He doesn't try to showboat and steal every scene, which is nice. And Bobby Cannavale gets to be something other than a nasty wife abusing,
got a Guido.
He just plays those Guido roles, and it's really unfair to him because he's a much better. I mean, as bad as Blonde was on so many levels, he really was a perfect Joe DiMaggio. He really had a great and it's sad that kind of overshadowed it. But anyway,
people forget Bobby came to our attention.
Yes,
in The Station Agent, playing that goofy guy down the. It was just so wonderful. And this is I like this too. Whoopi is in it, and Vera Farmiga, and all these really wonderful actors. It's just this really, really sweet film with this kid. I wish it would have done a little bit better.
I do too. I agree. Back to Black, the Amy Winehouse biopic. Kind of mixed reaction to it. I think it's a really, really solid performance from Marissa Abela playing Amy Winehouse. I think she's incredibly convincing as Amy Winehouse. Really nails it. And we were in London last year, kind of visiting all Amy Winehouse's whole stomping ground. It's great. You go to all of the shops there. It's just Amy Winehouse merchandise everywhere. The statue's gone. They don't have the statue out. I don't know where that went. But in any case, I could have made it a three-fer, right? I could have Elizabeth Montgomery and Rocky and Amy Winehouse, and I could have been happy. But she's not fictitious. She's real. No, there's a lot of good in this, but for some reason, it kind of starts to feel tawdry, needlessly tawdry at a certain point. I don't know. Did you see it? Did you have the same feeling?
Yeah, well, look, there were a few of these that came out near each other, and I appreciated them, but somehow I did not feel like they were sincere.
Yeah.
in terms of look, Amy had issues and problems, and Amy had this dad, and Amy had this mom, and Amy had this boyfriend, and this movie does not take any of those people to task. In a way that all of them need to be taken to task. There's a documentary about all of it. And to some extent that has to do with people who approved this and approved that and signed on and all this kind of thing. So I'm like, look, if you're going to make one of these movies, make the movie. You can't pussyfoot around just because we like Amy and her music. But if you're not going to do it, then just don't do it. Just do the documentary. And this one pussyfoots around.
Yep, I agree. And it gets a little sensationalistic at a certain point too. But I agree. But the performance is good. She's good. And then the last film, what a weird movie this is, Arcadian with Nicolas Cage. Did you see Arcadian?
Let me see, which one is this one now?
It's a post-apocalyptic thing. So it's basically Omega Man or Last Man on Earth, or whatever. But it's basically Omega Man with a guy and his two sons.
Oh yeah, the babies yes, I remember that. And they grow up in this world, and there are these things out there, and the girl is over in the other camp.
Exactly.
There are all these little camps up here. I do remember that. Yeah, this is one of the ones where Nick signed on to do 3 scenes. This is one every now and you give me $2 million. I'll give you 3 good scenes. But Nick gives you 3 solid scenes.
Yeah.
And the rest of the movie, you're on your own. You're gonna have to fit. And I remember that.
That
movie.
sums it up. Which makes me want to segue to the fact now that David O. Russell is going to do a John Madden biopic with Nick Cage playing John Madden. That is so far out there, it's either going to just crash and burn, or it's going to be an Oscar triumph. One or the other. It's not going to be.
I'll tell you this. Nick's not going to fail. If it goes south, it won't be Nick's fault. Here's what makes me think that it may just work. David O. Russell is great going overboard, right? When a story needs to go overboard, it needs to go there. He will go there if it needs it. American Hustle, Three Kings,
Hustle,
The
Hustle.
Fighter, yes, all of those, exactly. all of those.
So, but especially American Hustle, like the Abscam story. Let's go there, all the way there. So, John Madden, bigger than life guy, and a lot of stand-up comics have gotten a lot of mileage out of John Madden. Making fun of him and all the crazy things that he would say. And he's a funny guy. I mean, John Madden on Monday Night Football was really a larger than life figure. And I still remember, I was second year at UCLA, hanging at Westwood Friday night, Saturday night, whatever it was, and I was right next to the Village Theater, right next to the Village Theater, walking over to Westworld, the arcade that used to be there.
Yes.
And across the street was John Madden, like 6'4" and all 350 pounds of him or whatever, with some friends. Couldn't miss him. And a bunch of kind of fratty guys that were in front of the arcade, they yell across the street, "Hey, Johnny!" And he just puts his arms up and he's like shaking his fists and he's loving being recognized. Larger than life. Yeah. And I thought, and when the movie was announced, I thought back to that and I thought, John Madden, Nick Cage, if Nick Cage inhabits that completely overboard guy and goes there, and David O. Russell lets him go there and encourages him to go there, this movie could be a wild ride.
There's so much. I mean, all the football stuff, yes, but John Madden in the, I guess it was the 70s.
Yeah,
those taste great, less filling spots.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys, and John Madden shows up in a lot of movies and TV shows, always playing John Madden, usually playing the broadcaster. John Madden as a broadcaster doing something, and so he was just this bigger than life.
I will recommend people go onto YouTube and look up Frank Caliendo. Frank Caliendo does the mother of all John Madden impressions. It's really if you know John, you have to kind of know the John Madden shtick to begin with, and if you do, Caliendo will just send you in complete hysterics. You won't be able to. You'll lose bladder control. Wear a diaper. because you won't be. You will wet yourself. It's so funny. In fact, I'm going to do that right after we're done with the show. I'm going to dive into that. Let's hit some of these steelbooks real quick.
Yeah.
So there's a whole horror steelbook collection that just came out from Lionsgate, and they're calling it Bloody Disgusting Steelbooks. It's a Walmart exclusive. These are only available at Walmart, so you're not going to get these anywhere but Walmart. But it's if you really want to just get bloody disgusting, boy, they are doing it. It is I Spit on Your Grave unrated. This is let me just go through it. Spit on Your Grave unrated. Leatherface, yeah. Sinister, Wolf Creek, You're Next.
Oh yeah.
Texas Chainsaw and Hannibal Rising.
Yeah.
So these are all relatively recent. Like this is the remake of I Spit on Your Grave, right? This is not the original I Spit on Your Grave. This is the remake. Yeah. So these are all fairly recent bloody disgusting movies. They're all recent Lionsgate movies, and they clearly made a calculation that we're at least where things like Leatherface, I Spit on Your Grave, Hannibal Rising, Texas Chainsaw, that they're working with franchise material. So it's recognizable. It's not the original movies. These aren't the original movies. These are based on Texas Chainsaw Massacre and, Silence of the Lambs and whatnot. But by kind of inheriting the credibility of those franchises and creating this bloody, disgusting steelbook series and going into Walmart, that they are going to be able to squeeze more out of these movies than they would otherwise have been able to generate if they were individual releases, digitally or otherwise. Tim Cogshell, is that a smart business decision?
Well, look, some of these you're going to engage just because of the titles. It's just the title is the title is the title. Hannibal Rising, which is I like that movie. Because that movie speaks to Hannibal Lecter. It is Hannibal Lecter. And Tom Harris wrote the script for this.
Yeah.
During World War II. And of course, we get teased in The Silence of the Lambs by Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter. We get teased in that movie about some of the things that happened to his little sister, for instance, during World War II. So I kind of like that. This movie actually sort of wraps you up in that stuff. The other stuff, I would have preferred it where I spit on Your Grave. I'm not sure, but nevertheless, I think they'll probably do all right for people who are sort of into these films, and particularly for folks who some of these are just really good.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I think it's an interesting business model. I think there's a lot of smarts in this, and whoever came up with this, they should get at least a nice Christmas bonus. So let me hit the Criterions here before we wrap up with some TV. First from Radiance, not Criterion, but from Radiance, which is doing a lot of Criterion level great stuff, especially in Asian films. Tokujiro Lone Yakuza from 1966, one of the great 1960s era groovy Yakuza movies, is out. This is, look, it's a straight up Yakuza movie, but it's one of the better ones. It's really, really great. It's a brisk 90-minute run. Director Tai Kato is not one of the better known Yakuza directors stateside, but it's interesting because it is it's basically a period Yakuza film, right? So it goes into it kind of splits the difference between a Yakuza film and a samurai film in many respects. So you have one foot almost in each genre, and if many respects he's a Yakuza who is a Ronin. Right. So you're really kind of playing across genres. And I find that to be really, really fascinating. The performance, the lead performance by Kinosuke Nakamura. Wow, I didn't destroy it. I was able to pronounce that. I'm so proud of myself. Is pretty great. It's very nuanced, and it's not as relentlessly actiony as a lot of them are. So it kind of shatters all of the conventions that were associated with the Yakuza genre up until that point. And it's a really interesting movie. I highly recommend it. I had not seen it before. I'd heard about it. So Tokijiro, Tokijiro, Lone Yakuza. It's an interesting movie. And then the Criterion titles. So first up, 9 Academy Awards out of 9 nominations. 4K, Last Emperor, Bernardo Bertolucci's masterpiece. I just watched this again the other day, even before this came. It's
Joan Chen, my God. Joan Chen in this movie is so beautiful. Yeah. My gosh. Yeah.
I mean, it has the 218-minute television version on it, which I don't recommend that people watch. Stick with the 163-minute version from 1987, which won 9 Academy Awards. It is perfectly, it's just right there. I mean, the TV version, the 218-minute cut is... you can watch it over a couple of nights. It's not paced right. It has some extra history in it that's nice and interesting, but the longer Bertolucci cuts are rarely better than the shorter Bertolucci cuts. There's a ton of extras on here. It's, Ryuichi Sakamoto, the Oscar-winning composer who wrote the score with David Byrne, recently passed away.
Recently passed,
and the music is just sublime. The movie, Storaro's cinematography is second to none. Really a great movie. 1987. It's out in 4K. Goes without saying, you got to pick it up. There's also an interesting set here from. It's called Brief Encounters: The Long Farewell, and these are Russian movies made in 1967 and 1971 by Kira Muratova. I never, basically Ukrainian, but at the time Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. So they're technically Russian movies by a Ukrainian filmmaker. I'm totally unfamiliar with the movies, unfamiliar with the filmmaker, and they are truly fascinating. This is a woman working in a man's industry at the time and telling female stories that did not go over well with the Soviet authorities. And, they really kind of get to the heart of what it was like to be a woman living in that society at that time. Fascinating movies. I hope there are more movies in her filmography to be released. And then here, Not a Pretty Picture, the Martha Coolidge film made in 1975, before Martha Coolidge was officially on anybody's radar. And this is her feature debut, and it's not at all what you would have expected from her later movies. It's not light. This is I did not know this. Martha Coolidge was, when she was an adolescent, was raped, and this movie basically recreates that experience.
Yeah, sort of a date rape situation. Yeah, it's just part documentary, part very harrowing. Yeah,
it is harrowing. It is intense, and I'd like to see her go back to this kind of filmmaking again. It's a heavy punch. It's a heavy punch, and it also has a 1974 documentary about Coolidge and her grandmother. Or by Coolidge about her grandmother. I'm sorry. And an interview with Coolidge by Allison Anders, who was at UCLA, another one of the UCLA renegades from a few years earlier. And
Martha Coolidge, just to remind you, Valley Girl, Ramblin' Rose, introducing to all these very, very important movies, particularly in the early 80s. She directed Martha Coolidge. So that's who we're talking about.
Yeah. And then the last two are Albert Brooks movies. We got Real Life and Mother, both of them on 4K. Nobody, Tim, I'm going to ask you, how closely does Mother characterize your relationship with your mother?
In an odd sort of way too close, but in another sort of way, not at all. But in an odd sort of way too. Look, I love both of these movies. And what's that other Albert Brooks movie that he did with Sharon Stone? The Muse.
The Muse. Yes,
the Muse. Which one of the small. It was the Muse and lost it. The Muse almost killed me. It's so funny.
I know. I was sitting next to you.
Oh yeah,
next to you in the balcony at the Plaza Theater.
That scene with Jeff Bridges when they're playing tennis. Oh my God!
I remember you were just about ready to suffocate. You couldn't catch breath.
I almost had to leave the room. And these movies are all really, really wonderfully funny. In a way, Defending Your Life is the other one too. Lost in America, of course. But I love these. The Mother is just wonderful, and it was another moment. Debbie Reynolds, right?
Yes.
Where late-ish in her career, Debbie just got to pull the ripcord on another fantastic one, and remind us that I'm freaking Debbie Reynolds. I'm fantastic, and that was just really wonderful.
The wonderful thing about Brooks in these two films is that they are both movies about aspects of American life that are universal across all ethnic groups, all socioeconomic strata, all geographic parts of the country. There's just something universal in Real Life and in Mother that no matter who you talk to, no matter what part of the country they're from, no matter what generation they're from, there's something in them that he gets. He somehow found all those touchstones and he puts them together in these movies, and we're able to laugh at stuff that is just truly universal. And Real Life, I feel like, was the dry run. Like, Real Life is really funny. And this is, 1979, a lot of great stuff here. A great new interview with Albert Brooks. Yeah. And he really kind of gets into a lot of that aspect of it. But Mother is the one that sent me over the railing. Yeah. I watched this movie, and I remember when Mark Kaiser saw it, I asked him, did you see Mother? And he pauses and he goes, that is my goddamn mom. That is my goddamn mom.
I'm living that life.
He was, and I knew Mark's mom.
And we both knew her. Yeah.
I said, but let me tell you something. That's my mother too. That is my German-born mother. The ice cream,
black mother from St. Louis,
with the protective ice coating, the 9-pound block of cheese. Oh my gosh, all of that. I grew up with that, all of it. And I remember watching this the first time it came out on VHS. Got it on VHS. And I made my mother. I take it back. It was I took my mother to see it in the theater.
Oh.
I took my mother to see it in the theater, and she was giggling the whole time because she saw herself on screen in Debbie Reynolds. And years later, after my mother's memory started to fade, she didn't remember seeing it. So that's when I got it on DVD. And I watched it again. I said, you don't remember seeing it, do you? She goes, not really. And her memory was poor. And I said, we're going to watch it again. It'll be deja vu all over again. And we watched it again. I threw it on. And I was giving her the stink eye through the whole thing. Oh, every time the moments come up, I'm looking at it. I'm like, does that remind you of somebody? Somebody who's doing that? And she was giggling all over again. It was the same experience. It was fantastic. So two wonderful memories.
Beautiful.
Anyway, let's talk about a little bit of TV in the time that we have left. All 3 seasons of Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso, The Richmond Way includes a Believe poster. Tim, how much of Ted Lasso did you watch?
I've engaged all of it at this point, but I will admit this: I was a person who resisted Ted Lasso.
I did too.
And I just, because everybody was just, oh my God, I was just like, I'm just not, I'm done. And then it was probably just one of those periods when they gave me a free, what is it, Apple Plus? Is Ted over on Apple or is Ted over on Disney? I forget. Apple.
No, it was Apple Plus. Yeah.
Apple Plus. And they gave me one of those free things. So I did the whole run, and it turned out to be one of the most joyful, wonderful.
I agree.
I love Ted Lasso. It comes down to a very simple thing for me. Ted is a good guy. Who's actually a good guy, He's not an anti-hero. He's just a hero. He's a good guy, and he's going to be a good guy, and it's all the hell it is to it. Now, you and I grew up with characters like Ted Lasso, but it strikes me that younger folks, who frankly didn't grow up with the Ted Lassos of the world on television, characters like that. We grew up with good guys, guys who never threw the first punch, and all that kind of stuff. And in the sort of anti-hero or other kind of hero kind of came into being a little bit later in our lives, maybe when we were teenagers or whatever. But we grew up with good guys, just like Ted Lasso. And I got to tell you, I fell in love with that and the notion of that through him all over again.
It's weird that I resisted it as well, because it's about soccer, for crying out loud.
That's really weird for you.
Why would I resist a soccer show? And I think part of it was I was just being snobby and cynical about it. I'm like, oh yeah, I know soccer, and I'll bet that's it. And I was being that guy. And it was my dentist who, I grew up with, is an old friend, and he's like, no, you got to watch it because you're the soccer guy. You got to watch Ted Lasso. He goes, trust me, I would not normally, he's one of the guys that made fun of me when we were kids. Just like, you like that funny European sport. And so I'm like, there's just it's so sweet.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's a show that has a vibe all its own. And
it's not that it doesn't have drama. It has drama.
No.
Or just particularly unrealistic. But yeah, that movie was an antidote to whatever dark or silly or otherwise objectionable crap that I had to watch, for work.
Yeah.
Then I throw in some Ted Lasso and wash it all away.
So 25 episodes plus a movie of Ultraman Taiga. I gotta be honest. I'm Ultraman out at this point. The helmets and the suits all look different, but I don't know who's Taiga and Giga and Mega, and I've totally lost track of them all.
I don't like the guy with the sort of flaming gold and red helmet with the spikes. That's not Ultraman. Who's that guy?
It's just they've tried to reinvent this thing a little bit too much. So Ultraman Taiga is really overboard. I gave it about 6 episodes to try to figure out what was going on. I'm lost me completely. But look, there's a reason these shows are on. And then let's see,
21 seasons of NCIS, baby.
Tim, you remember when everybody said Gunsmoke ran for 20 years? Nothing will ever beat Gunsmoke. And then suddenly Law and Order kind of crawls over that, and you go like, wow, but nothing will ever beat Law and Order. And then The Simpsons crawls over, and then South Park crawls over, and then I don't know. There's like 5 other shows that have all gone over 20. Like 3 of the Law and Order shows have gone over 20 seasons, and now NCIS is in its 21st season. It's like it's not special anymore. How did this show get to 21 years? It's NCIS.
There's an audience that latches on to some of these things and they stick with it for the whole run. And if you have a big enough audience doing that, there's no reason to cancel the show. Now on network television, you'll notice that in streaming, there has never been, and streaming has been around 21 years, but there will never be in streaming a 21-year series.
The Chicago. How far along are the Chicago shows?
Oh yeah, good Lord, yeah, exactly. We got to be a good 15 or so into the earliest ones for sure. But no, they'll never do that in streaming at all.
But here's the thing: Law and Order, it takes place in New York, so I get it. You're gonna, New York has always been New York; it'll always be New York. There, 20 years of crime, 25 years of crime in New York. It is what it is. It's a city of whatever it is, 15 million people in the greater area. But NCIS is the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Is there 21 years of crime in the Navy to deal with?
Dude, what can you say? I guess it is what it looks like.
All right.
I like look at David McCallum, the man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yeah.
Was on the show from the start until he passed.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe 2020. I don't know. Not too terribly long ago.
It was about a year and a half ago.
A lot of folks have come through this show and built their careers out. As Michael Weatherly came through this show, and eventually he got that show, whatever that show is that he does over there, Bull.
Yeah.
And if you work your way through, you'll see a lot of folks who came through this show and went on to do whatever they went on to do. But they got it all started right here on one of these NCISs.
Wow.
It's like a little industry. Some of these shows, and it's the same thing, I suppose, for movies in some ways, become little industries of their own. They're like the industries of Hollywood. And if you're associated with one of these shows, writer, producer, actor, whatever it is, you can literally have your whole career, if not literally on that show, in the ecosystem of those shows, the spinoffs and whatnot. So that you can just be an NCIS employee for 21 years and spend your whole life working on that ecosystem of shows and retire working on that ecosystem, like you worked at McDonald's or for GM or something for 21 years. Where'd you work for 21 years? I worked at NCIS. Like literally, I worked at NCIS for 21 years.
Yeah, no, it's a good living. If you're an actor, that's a
well. If we can get it back to that, we're working on it. Yeah, but we're working on it.
So I got a Shudder original here I'll mention real quickly, History of Evil. It's a terrible title, kind of a weird movie. It can't really figure out what it wants to be. It's like a semi post-apocalyptic movie, or kind of a dystopian. It's not even post-apocalyptic, isn't the right word. It's dystopian. Kind of in a... It wants to sort of be that. It's like in the near future we've gone all sort of religious, fascistic, and anyway, you got this guy and his family. They break out, and he's on the run from the authorities, and they wind up in this creepy house, and then everything gets all shining, and you're like, what? Why does whatever? So it's like somebody couldn't quite figure out what story they wanted to tell, but Shudder originals are they tend to be that. Okay, that's it. We are done this week. That's it. We're out of here. So you're on Film Week this week.
Coming up,
I'm on next week, so we're gonna have to. I got to start cramming the movies for radio. But meanwhile,
you got a really cool Substack coming up. That interview you're doing, you should tell people about.
So come on to my Substack, HollywoodHeretic.substack.com. I've got a really terrific podcast interview coming up with an attorney. We're going to be talking about AI. So keep an eye out for that. Come on over, sign up at the Substack, HollywoodHeretic.substack.com. And have a great week. Everybody's going back to school. My daughter's going back to school, starting middle school. Very exciting. So we will. Yeah, you have no idea what we've been going through. This is going to be an insane week. It's going to be a crazy week, but we'll get through it. All right. See you next time, everybody.